Hello, my name is Kiriath, and today we are going to take a better look at those new models that we talked about on Saturday, that we saw in various forms. We saw horribly blurry, pixelated Necron goodness, then slightly nicer Necron goodness, then we also saw some renders of Primaris stuff, which turned out to be totally legit, and they were also not in colour or anything, they were just renders, but now we actually have the models to go off. Then we saw them in the possible halves of the starter set. It's been a slow increase in quality over the time. So we're going to take a look at the decent, actual, full images right now. If you're thinking about translating what the Scarab Potato say, thank you, Scarab Potato. I believe it's, hey kids, want to see some new models. I think that's what that translates to. That is, I'm not like doing it on the fly. I just read that earlier. I may be slightly off, but that's the gist of it. So you don't have to go away and work out what that is. So, we've already seen the Assault Marine. Assault Marine, good, fine, nice. We also saw the Necron Warriors, which I still really like. There's been a bit of talk about the noses. I think they've just been over-highlighted. I think I mentioned that in the video yesterday. The first video on Saturday of the 3. I apologise for the spam that day. I'm sure it's just the paint scheme. I think they've just been highlighted a bit too much. If they were a bit darker around the edges of the nose hole, it wouldn't be anywhere near as obtrusive, I don't think. Still really like them. They still look really good. Cool. More cosmic horror than Space Egyptian, and I'm fine with it. Now, we also had the Scorpec Lord that we saw. Oh, Lord. Now, there's a few things that I've noticed about this that actually maybe I'm not a huge fan of. Mostly, overall, I really like this model. I think it looks really good. However, there are just a couple of things that on reflection I'm not entirely sure about. The first thing being the arm holding the big, I forget the name of it, Hyperphase Blade? His massive cleaver that he's got. We'll just stick with that, that's fine. I like the weapon. I feel like the arm holding it needs to be a bit beefier. Now, obviously, that doesn't really make a huge amount of sense. I'm aware of this. He is a metal construct, and as such, musculature is not really a thing. But the connection between the forearm and the actual weapon itself just feels a bit weedy. Now, I'm assuming it's there so there's more scope for movement on the blade itself, but it just looks a little bit, I don't know, it almost looks unfinished to me, but that is just one of two very, very, very minor complaints. The only other complaint that I have, really, is that I would kind of prefer that carapace on the top of him to be a little more angled down. That's it. That's it. It's the smallest of small nitpicks, to be fair. I like the overall look of the model. I actually like the tripod look for the legs. I know a few people have commented it would be better with 4 legs. Possibly, but I do, I like a bit of tripod action every now and again. I think it looks decent. And it's massive. So, it's, from what I can tell, it is a sort of destroyer. And it comes with a flensing claw, which is terrifying, and an enmitic annihilator. I'm not entirely sure what that is. But yeah, it looks like an absolute solid murderer. Also looks a bit like the robot out of Judge Dredd. I forget the name of it. We also have another Primaris Lieutenant. It is a Lieutenant with a Volkite gun and a Volkite pistol and a Storm Shield and Power Sword. Now, I said this on Saturday, and I stand by it, and we will get more into it as we go along here. If that had been the overall aesthetic for the Primaris Marines at the start, I feel like a lot of the pushback against them would have been almost completely avoided. The main complaint that I see, and the main complaint that I have, is that they're a bit samey, they're a bit bland. They've lost that kind of overly zealous, kind of religious feel to them. They don't have as much iconography, they don't have as much personality as a lot of the older Space Marine stuff. This has all of that. The helmet is more interesting. There's more in the way of purity seals. You've got the little heraldic shield thing on his chest. You've got a robe. You've got little trinkets and the little symbol, which the kind of guess that I've seen so far that makes the most sense is that it's like a Crux Terminatus thing, but it's for the Indomitus Crusade. So I think I've seen someone describe it as a Crux Indominatus, which I quite like. If they were more like that and less like plain, then I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like it would have gone down better. So we also have this as well. Now this, we're going to come back to this because there's a whole load of stuff to dissect about this picture we'll come back to it because, dear God, and there's little things to zoom in on and stuff that we can take a proper look at. Let's just carry on to the Primaris stuff. So yeah, we've got the Assault Interceptors, Intercessors. Too many in-esser names on the Primaris stuff, I'll be honest with you. It's getting a bit silly now. They are intercessors with a chainsword and a bolt pistol. That's what they are. Again, it's taken so long to get like proper close combat. I mean, I know Reavers exist, but still, the chainsword and bolt pistol combo is classic Space Marine. It is classic Space Marine. Why is it taking this long for it to be an actual thing that you can have for Primaris units? Again, this is one of those things where it's like, maybe if this had been an option to begin with, there might have been a bit less pushback. There would have been less of that focus on, oh, these guys are just like modern stand back and shoot. You know, where's the close combat glory gone? It's here, and it's just such a... Oh, it's frustrating because it's taken so long for this to happen that I just don't understand why. Why it's got to the point where we are only now getting a whole side of Space Marines. One of the sides of Space Marines that have made them what they are. We're only just getting it. But we are getting it. So that's, I should stop bitching about it because it's happened. So what more do I want? This dude who's running without his chainsword out, absolute hero, doesn't need it. He's just going to bitch slap people into oblivion. Like him. So yeah, they all look good, they look fine. They are the same ones from the renders that we saw. We also have the Blade Guard veterans. And again, they just look like the standard Space Marines, but taller. And so they look like they've got more personality, they look more interesting. We've got storm shields, we've got those little symbols. They've all got the symbols on the van braces as well, which is cool. We've got the shields on the front. They just look so much more old school Space Marine than so much of the Primaris line. It's unreal. Again, if this kind of look is what was presented to begin with, I'm sure the pushback would not have been as severe. These guys genuinely look good. They look solid. I really like them. I really like them. They've also got the bikes as well, the Primaris bikes. Now, this does nothing to fix the issue of the old bikes. It really doesn't. My main issue with the old Space Marine bikes is that they don't look like they'll be able to survive off-road for more than about 2 seconds. As soon as you hit a sizable rock, that's it, you're done, you're dead. Your bike's just going to fall apart. In a way, this is possibly even worse, because the armour folds down under the chassis of the bike, which is a mental design. I mean, look at that. Actually, on the base, for this one and this one, they are driving past rocks, which, if they'd driven over them, would have just scraped or jammed under the underside of the bike. Like, that rock there is taller than the clearance of the bike that's going past it. It's still a terrible design, but they are up-armoured bikes. They've got that solid, these things will look great. I mean, Sonic Sledgehammer said that these guys would look great in Iron Hands colours, and they absolutely would. That kind of angular armour they've got around them looks really cool. The placement of the bolters is, it's fine, it works pretty well. I like despite the fact that the armour is dumb and goes round and underneath, I still like the way it looks, because you've got that front suspension section for the front wheel jutting out of it, which I like the look of it. This design would make so much more sense if they were actually grav bikes instead of wheeled bikes. The fact they're still wheeled just makes them as nonsensical as the current ones, but but there are design elements to them that I vastly prefer. They're chunky. They are still, I'd say they seem like more futuristic than the current ones, than the standard Space Marine bikes, but they've got that Imperium feel in that it's a box. It's a box with a bike sticking out the front and out the back of it. You cannot get much more classic Imperium than a box with guns stuck on, and they've translated that onto their motorcycles now, which is, I mean, you know, I think it works pretty well. It looks decent, even if they do have to drive around small pebbles. Now, the main talk of the town is this guy. It's this guy. So someone has to keep all these new Space Marines in line, though, right? Someone to execute the orders of the Chapter Masters, or, you know, just execute dudes in general. That's this guy. Now, he's a Judicar. He's an entirely new kind of Space Marine. He's got an Executioner blade specially designed for lopping off heads. And there's a lot of judicating to be done. I've seen people, like, theorise that this is essentially a Space Marine Commissar, which would be class, although I'm not entirely sure the logistics or lore-based reason for killing friendly Space Marines, because typically they famously know no fear. So it's unlikely that they're going to turn, run, and be faced with this guy going, get back to the front or I'll lop your head off. Probably not going to work like that. But this is such an over-the-top model. This ticks all my boxes for, that is stupid. And yet, I absolutely will buy one. That it's one of those. You know, every now and again you get a model that you look at and go, I don't know what you were on when you made this, because that is plain silly, but at the same time, I have to appreciate all the details, and it's just the right kind of silly for me. This is one of those situations. He's carrying a massive hourglass, because he does not have time for your bullshit. He's got a massive Executioner sword with the flat top, which I really like. Clearly says Terminus on the blade. I can't quite see what it says on the other side. The side that's hidden by his head might be easy to make out actually on the sprue. The head I'm not too sure about. For me, the head is a bit weird. I think it's a helmet with a face mask. Because if it's not a helmet, it means it must be a helmet, because he's got like red glowy eyes. And it would also mean he had no nose if it wasn't. It's a weird head. I'd be tempted to replace that with something that isn't whatever that is, just because it looks odd. It doesn't really look like anything. It doesn't really fit in with anything else. It doesn't. Yeah, that's the weakest part of the model for me. The rivets on the armor look really cool. The fact that he's got his leather coat, but one sleeve is out, is just it's so anime, and I love it for that. He's just quite a good model. As we say, no idea what he does currently, aside from chop people, because he clearly he does not have time to deal with you. But I don't really care. This is one of those ones where I feel like you could do a whole load of stuff to it. Make a better looking Master of Executions for a start. I mean, that's galling, isn't it? Chaos get the Master of Executions, and then the Primaris get this guy who just flat out, despite the lack of bone armor, looks more threatening, I would argue. Yeah, quite the thing there. Also, no shoulder pad, I've just noticed, on one side. That's interesting. So he's only got like a full shoulder pad on one side of him. Mind you, it's probably difficult to get his arm out of the sleeve with the shoulder pad fitted over the top, so maybe he took it off for that. So over the top, so mad. Okay, now let's take a look at this Necron picture. So we talked about this at the end of the actual preview roundup. It was obviously a lot more pixelated. This is the one from the Warhammer community article. What I've done is I've grabbed it so we can zoom in a bit more and we can move about a bit. So yeah, let's have a closer look at some of this stuff. First of all, we've got the Silent King in the top right there. So let's take a look at him. Get us nicely zoomed in. Obviously, the more we zoom in, the lower quality the picture is going to become, but we can get a good feel for the guy right there. I won't go in. Yeah, we'll leave it there, because otherwise it's just going to end up horribly pixelated, and we won't be able to see anything. So, first thought is that I do quite like it. He's got a massive floating throne. It feels like a kind of mix between Catacross, the Ossiarch Bone Reapers dude, whose name I always get the wrong way round, and the guy in the throne from the Nighthaunt range, King what's his name, feels like a kind of mix between those two. Now, of course, he has what looks like a Catan shard powering his throne, because he's just that much of an absolute baller. I'm a little unsure as to the actual model itself, like the actual Silent King. He's got his little retainers on the side. Okay, fine. We talked about this being a diorama ages ago. I assumed it would be, and it is. The Silent King himself, it's a little difficult to tell, because he is a bit pixelated. It's not like an up-close detail shot of him. There's a description of him that like talks about like lithe and grace, and how he looks like he's been, like his body is formed in like a better way than all the other Necron stuff. It's a little hard to see whether that is represented all that well there. Now, he is tall. He's tall. I'd say he looks, for his height, compared to some of the other Necron stuff, like quite slim, so pretty lithe. It's whether it has that kind of was it like described as like an artisan sort of thing? Like it's just so much more graceful. It's a little difficult to tell whether that has been done justice from this distance. My gut feeling is that maybe it hasn't, but it's a little hard to tell, because it's, you know, it gets more pixelated the more you zoom in, and we've only got one resolution of image to look at for this, so I don't know. I like the overall presence, I like the overall feel of it. I think I'm going to reserve final judgment for when we actually get a proper close-up of the guy. But my gut instinct is that it doesn't quite match the description. Although then again, how often do they? Realistically, there's a lot of detail that can go into characters in the books and stuff that it's just not feasible to do on the models. I would hope that he would look super graceful once we get a proper close-up of him. His like weird living metal cloak does look cool. I'll give him that. That's a nice touch. The big shields floating on either side, I think, are part of the same kit, but they've got separate bases. So I wonder if it's not a situation whereby you want to get to the king, you got to go through the shields. That'd be fun. That'd be interesting. But yeah, first impression is quite like it overall. Need to get a bit closer. Need to get a bit more detail on the go to make the final call. Let's go. Let's look at this Catan shard for a start. Someone said, wouldn't it be amazing if that was the reference to Sanguinius with the spear in the wings? It'd be funny, but I don't think that's exactly what they were going for. I quite like it. It's weird. It's very weird. It's got some interesting... there's some interesting contrast there between, like, this and the Nightbringer and the Deceiver. Because they still... like, those two still have, like, defined facial features for a start. This doesn't. It's just got a full-on gap where the face was, and there's a glowing symbol coming out of the gap where the face should be. It looks more incomprehensible, which I like. It's more kind of, I guess, like, I don't know whether horror, like cosmic horror is the right thing to say that. I'm not sure. It has more of just a completely unknowable, completely alien aspect to it. There's no face, there's just a symbol. The wings are constructed of something or other. There's lightning rippling all over them. You've got the definite, like, technological aspects where you've got that big long tail kind of thing coming down from the back of it, but then it has very, you know, human musculature and stuff, which it's just really damn creepy, which I like. I like that. One of the things that we touched on sometime last week, I forget which video it was that when Necrons showed up, like when I had my Necrons in 3rd, and when they got their first codex, there was already like an unknowable alien threat that just came through and wrecked everything, and that was Tyranids. And Necrons had a different slant. They had a bit more of You know, they had a mechanical slant to that same kind of basis. Obviously, the motivations are different, but the story of we were assaulted by an unyielding foe that we can't understand or communicate with, there's only so much you can do with that particular story. They needed something to separate them a bit. They needed something so that it wasn't just two factions of, on the surface of it, just never-ending assaults of what are we supposed to do about this. Going full Egyptians in space, I'm still not convinced was the right way to go with it. I know that there are many who really like that lore. To be honest, I think mostly I'm just indifferent about it. It's like, yeah, I think they needed something. I don't know that I would have picked that if it was me, but that's where we are now, and you know, what you're going to do. This stuff seems to be leaning more towards like the kind of horror aspect. Like, that is creepier than the Nightbringer, and it's way creepier than the Deceiver. That is just like incomprehensible nonsense, which is really, really good for what is the remains of a star god that's been trapped by a race of now like immortal metallic beings. Like, that is unknowable, but there's still hints of stuff in there that are just a bit too familiar, which I really like. And it's a similar story with like things like this walker down here on the right. So I'm liking the move into stuff like that. So you've got this big four-legged walker with this weird elongated neck. That, from what I've seen, is a reanimator, which I'm assuming reanimates stuff. It would make sense. That is creepy. That is creepy and weird. It's spindly. It's too tall. It's got a weird long neck that looks like the head kind of cranes around to look at you. It's just a really freaky design. Like, it's a bit nightmarish. It's too spindly. It's too thin. It's too top heavy. It's quite War of the Worlds inspired. But that's the kind of thing I really like when it comes to Necron stuff. You can give them that horror element and really push it without it becoming too over the top. That, to me, is a really good example of that. Now, a kind of separation from that is that's Sopek Destroyer. That is less so. I mean, that is just a big, tanky guy with a couple of weapons and 3 legs. And that's fine, that works well, but it's not got the same creep factor as like the Catan or the Reanimator. It still looks decent, but it's not quite as, I would say, like, it's not quite as like creepy / horror-y inspired. In contrast to that though, you got these freaks. So you've got that, from what I've been told, is a Plasmamancer. And those are cryptothralls, something like that. He's weird as anything. Got a really long chin as well. He's weird as anything. No legs. He just floats there. Kind of almost like the old Wraiths. Back when they had just a Necron warrior face. And little kind of stabby claws. Kind of reminds me a little bit of that because he's just hovering there. And then you've got these like cryptothralls things that are next to him that look a little bit like they've been made out of a spare jet engine, which is a little bit confusing. But those are just flat out weird and creepy models. There's like an uneasiness to them, which, again, I really like that aspect of the Necrons, and I'm glad they seem to be leaning more into it. We also have this absolute chunk of a heavy destroyer. I'm assuming a heavy destroyer. That, I'm so happy that is a thing. That massive destroyer on the left there. I forget when it was. There was like some concept art that was done by Jez Goodwin. And that guy was one of the things he drew. Now I can't remember whether it was actually in like around third or not when he drew it. I just remember seeing it, like seeing that art years and years and years and years and years ago and being like, oh my god, that looks so good. And then the actual, destroyers were not like that. They didn't have the rounded kind of vents at the bottom. The carapace wasn't as like It wasn't as smooth and as curved. The guns weren't anywhere near as chunky and hefty. I still like them a lot, but this is the sketch that I saw and loved immediately, and now it's a model. I'm so happy it's actually a model. It's so good. That gun is terrifying as well. What the hell is that going to do? I mean, that's got to be like some sort of obscene anti-tank weapon, surely. I mean, what else could it possibly be? Look at it. The gun is bigger than some of the other... The gun's bigger than the dude that he's, like, hovering next to. Mad. Quality. Also, loving the 3-arm approach on that as well. Like, the increase in arms and stuff is fun. I like that. Now, before we look at the other big 4-legged guy, before we zoom out to see him properly, look at this cheeky little sod. We're going to go all the way in for this, right? Look at this cheeky little bar steward hanging out in the back there. Behind the back of the new Monolith and the other walker, we've got that lad. He's got a little like a little white face at the top, obviously an eye in the centre, but it looks like there's other holes around the eye, like an extended carapace, a big ball of energy on the top of him by the look of it, cables everywhere, and he's lurking, the little scamp. Look at him, lurking back there, trying to be all unobtrusive. That's got to be like an assassin character of some kind. I can't tell whether he's got 2 legs or like 3 or 4. He's definitely got 4 arms, because he's got like 2 that come directly out from the carapace and then 2 underneath those. It's really hard to tell what weapons he's holding. I think maybe a couple of ranged and a couple of melee would make sense. But look at that little sneaky bastard. Little sneaky git. Just chilling out in the back there, thinking we wouldn't notice. Yeah, well, we did notice, didn't we? I say we. I apologise who pointed that out to me on Twitter, but yeah, little sneaky so-and-so. Okay, we also have, again, the massive four-legged walker off to the left there, which looks similar to the other one. It's hard to tell whether the scale's the same. I feel like it's probably a dual kit situation. Obviously, massive gun on that one, big old gun on the top of the carapace, and then another 2 below the head. I can't tell whether it's the same kit. I feel like it might be. That does look bigger than that, but it could just be, I mean, it could be as simple as it's, closer to the camera. It's kind of hard to tell. Either that or it's just very similar designs, maybe. Either way, again, I really like that. I think it looks really good. I think the last new thing that we have, in this image at least, because obviously the Triarch Stalker, the Quasar, the old Doom Scythe up there, and we've got some Triarch Praetorians, we've got the new Warriors, we've got some Immortals up there as well, we've got the bloody Cryptek over there. Those are all old. Oh, there is some scenery by the look of it. That thing at the back there in the middle, let's zoom in again. That could well be some Necron-specific scenery next to that monolith in the back, so that's cool. Possibly 2 variants of it, because there's one that's exposed and one that looks like it had something over the top of it. So yeah, that could be something else to look out for. But I've saved the monolith for last, because the monolith is just so good. It's so good. Firstly, the green crystal is gone. Thank God for that. Bloody thing. I think that's been scaled up as well. I think that's bigger than the current monolith. I mean, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's bigger than the current monolith. So yeah, the green crystal is gone. Instead, we've got this weird kind of geometric orb thing. Lots of kind of interlocking things going around it, which is cool. They've obviously rounded out the pillars at the top, the 3 pillars that go around the power source. They've been rounded over, and I think they've been extended inwards slightly so that they're a bit closer together. The guns along the side, like the guns sticking out the corners, no green rods. Those are gone now. They're actually a different design now as well, I believe. I need to get my Monolith out of the loft so I can do a comparison, but I'm pretty sure those are... I think the Monolith had a 3-barreled gun on each corner, didn't it? I mean, we looked at it just the other day, but now I'm just like... I'm obsessed with this, because this is so much better to my eye. So much better. It fits in with the Tesseract Vault a lot better. It looks imposing still. It just looks weird as anything. You've got the like the kind of the Gorse Flare like barrels going along the side. Again, replacing green rods. So that's all the green rod stuff gone. Be interested to know what's happening with the destroyers, like whether the destroyers are those 3-legged things and whether the floating platforms are gone. Although then again, we have got that big chunk down the bottom left, so maybe that is going to be the new kit, and you can either get a heavy destroyer or you can get like a normal destroyer. I hope they're not... although if that's the case and they're only coming in packs of 1, that would be crushing. That would be gutting. I do hope that's not the case. But yeah, also, look at this detail here on this Monolith. Zoom all the way in. There's a Necron warrior phasing in, like passing through the gate and like phasing into existence, and that is badass. That is cool. I really like that. I don't know that I'd want to try and paint it, and I'd feel like... mind you, I was going to say assembly could be a nightmare, but I'm imagining this is all just part of the same... Like, these are all just separate bits on the sprue. But yeah, I really like that detail. It looks like it's not something that you have to have, because we have another Monolith up the top there at the back, and there's no warrior stepping through that one, so it looks like it's an optional extra. Oh, actually, hang on a second. What? No, wait for it. I jumped the gun. I hadn't noticed that before. So, we've got these guns on this Monolith, which are not the ones that are like the 3 barrels next to each other. So we've got that on those. But on that one on the back, that is the 3-barrel one that you can see. It's a little bit tricky to make out, but it's totally different profile to that. That does not look like that or that. So it looks like there's options there too. Cool. Nice. Awesome. So yeah, that is the more kind of clear image of the new Necron stuff. I don't think we've missed anything there. I think we've got everything. There's a few things in the other picture that aren't in this picture, I think. Overall, I really like the direction they've taken it. They have got more of that cosmic horror thing back. The warriors are not as clean. They're a bit more damaged. The poses are a bit more like undead, I guess. The constructs are becoming spindly and odd and creepy. The Catan Shard is all sorts of weird. The Monolith just looks flat out better to me. I'm really happy with these. Super happy with them. I'll be interested to know what you guys think of this. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you have a particular thing, like a particular reimagining that you think looks better than the others? Is there like a favourite out of all of these things? What do you reckon the little sneaky sod in the back is going to be doing? Like assassin, do you reckon? Just full on assassin, something like that? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. In the meantime, feel free to click all the things, Patreon, video, subscribe, all that stuff. Click it if you like, don't click it if you don't want to. As always, there's an affiliate link in the description for Element Games, which is a nice way to support the channel if you would like. I leave it in your capable hands. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.